Hello and welcome to the Stinking Albatross podcast. My name is Alissa Galope.
And I am Scott Hayward.
And we are together for the first time ever in podcast history, which has only been about 9 episodes.
Is it 9 already?
I think so. I think This is the 9th.
That's what happens when you're having fun. You just lose count.
Absolutely. And so Scott is on vacation, so doing the podcast because that's part of everyone's vacation. And tell them you were in Manitoba.
Yeah, my wife and I went to Manitoba for a couple of weeks, and we just landed today. You picked us up at the airport where I thought a different lady was you, and I opened up her trunk to the vehicle and almost put all of our stuff in some of the lady's vehicle. It's actually a miracle that we even come here alive, because there's been 2 times now since leaving Brandon where I have accidentally left my wife on the tarmac in Brandon.
You didn't just leave her.
Yeah, I know.
Just on the tarmac.
Yeah, I know. She's catching on to me. It's because we take a turboprop plane in Brandon, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have what do you call those? Like when you actually walk down the hallway. Yeah, you go up the stairs, and I can't hear, and people are yelling at me with the mask on, and I can't hear, and the turboprops are going. But apparently today was I folded up the stroller so they could take it on, but it didn't lock, and they wanted me to come back, but I didn't hear them, and I was already in the plane, and she was nowhere to be seen. And then when we landed, almost went to someone else's vehicle, and then for the second time in a row, when you've picked us up and you take us to the wrong spot again by the Cross Iron Mills Mall.
Yeah.
The first time that happened last Christmas, Oriana got all excited because she thought Alyssa's taking us somewhere special and it's a surprise. But no, it was just a gravel parking lot where you didn't know where to take us, despite the fact that on your, in your vehicle, you have the GPS
map, right in front of my face.
And it's talking to you. You need
I'm
to listen
directionally
to it.
challenged. I don't know. When I see or think about directions, my brain goes black.
Right. Just directions?
Nothing processes. I'm just so directionally challenged. It's insane. And it's easy. If I miss one turn off, I have to go to the mall.
Right.
So it's not like I'm like...
You're Robin Sparks.
Driving all over the place. Exactly. Yeah. I just got that. I was like, how do I know that? How I Met Your Mother.
But we're here.
Yes.
And
just got here.
Yeah.
First thing we do, podcast.
That's right.
We're dedicated.
Because where we're going after this.
Sushi.
That's right.
Woot, woot.
We've been waiting for a very long time to go all you can eat. Not even the good sushi. The all you can eat sushi.
Our friend Keelan calls it, what does he call it? Trash sushi.
Trash sushi. I'm okay with that.
It's catchier than that, but it's delicious.
Yeah.
And they raised the price so much though. It used to be like $24.99 and now it's like $36 a person.
You know, Alissa, some people are calling it just inflation.
Some people.
We
won't name names.
One person.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to mistake, that lady's car with my car because it happened to be a Victoria's Secret model that was driving.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's exactly what it was.
So are you pumped to be in Calgary? You always talked whenever we lived in Ontario and we would come to Calgary, you were always so pumped to come to Alberta.
Yeah.
Do you like it better than Manitoba?
It's better now that you're here.
Aw.
Yeah.
And all the kids are crying.
That's right. Yeah. There's 3 of them up there, all within a year and a half?
Under 2.
Yeah. 3 kids under the 2. Yeah.
Good
so,
times.
Well, it'll be a fun week. They're already starting to play well together. So
if no one gets eaten by a bear, it'll be a success. Yeah.
My daughter is a bear. All she eats is just berries and salmon. Very expensive.
Oh, she's gonna love sushi.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Oh yeah.
I don't think my husband hates sushi, so Abby's never tasted sushi in her life. Or salmon, I mean, not sushi.
Salmon, yeah. I wonder if salmon sashimi would be too tough for her. I don't know. Yeah.
Let's give it a try.
We're gonna find out. Yeah. Next week's podcast might be very different.
We are drinking some Alberta Brute.
That's
brews.
right.
What do you know? It's
This is Big Rock.
Big Rock, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a special. What is this called? Like a tumbler? It's too bright. It says I'd shank a bitch for you right in the kidney. And this Tumblr has an interesting story. About a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I checked the mail and had this Tumblr in the mail, and there was no card, there was no return address, there was nothing. It was just a package which had this very odd Tumblr in it, and that was it. And so at first I thought, oh, okay, this seems like something that I would buy. Like, did I accidentally buy it? Was I drinking too much? I thought this is a message that
you would send to yourself as a reminder every morning.
I love myself so much that I'd shank a bitch just for me. But no, I checked my Amazon history. Nothing was there. So then I thought, okay, maybe like a friend sent it because it might be funny, I guess. I don't know why they would send me that randomly. So I asked most of my dark humored friends, and everyone thought no.
Most of them.
Everyone said no, didn't send that. So then I started to get concerned because I was like,
is it a threat?
Is it a threat? Is it a stalker? Is it some, I'm so famous. I have all these stalkers, and I didn't know what to think of it. And so I just I couldn't figure it out. Months and months and months passed. And then I get a Facebook message from a mutual friend of ours who works in the pro-life movement. I shall not name names. And she was like, hey, did you get my present? And it was so random. And I guess it wasn't that random because she had stayed here, but it was so long ago that it was a thank you for staying here. But she had stayed here with me like a year before.
I remember that. Yeah.
So it didn't connect whatsoever.
When you know her, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't ask her about it. Like, that would have been one of the first people I would have asked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're smarter than me.
Well, yeah.
So anyway, I love this cup and Tumbler cup, and I will drink many a liquid out of it from this point forward.
Excellent. Well, it should be a good week. I'm here for a week with you, by the way.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good week planned.
We do.
Yeah.
Bragg Creek.
Yeah. We're not going to French trivia.
No.
We got destroyed last time.
And I checked if there was any, and there weren't.
No. That's probably for the best.
So to Jonathan's pleasure, there's no French trivia happening. And then, so Bragg Creek, and then you guys want to go head to Banff. We always like the Walled House.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'll see.
Yeah.
Bonfires and good meals.
Taking it easy. Costco.
Costco meals.
You're the only person I know who lives closer to a Costco than I do.
That was by choice. So
that's why the value of your home is worth so much.
Yeah, exactly. Today's episode is brought to you by LaRosse Media. They produce podcasts, videos, commercials, and marketing plans. Check them out at larossemedia.com. Okay, well, we have nothing planned for this podcast, specifically in terms of like headlines or topics.
No.
Because we decided last week that we would be talking about our journey into how we started RightNow and what's been going on up until present day. Because a lot of people don't know how it was created, why it was created. And it is interesting. And there is a lot of reasoning behind it. It wasn't just both of us wanting to start another pro-life
No one who is
sane
would do what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is part 1 of 2 parts on how we started RightNow, some stories about the beginning of the process of our organization, and we look forward to doing part 2 and telling you the rest of the story in the weeks to come. Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay.
The autobiography of RightNow, featuring Scott and Alissa.
Is it an autobiography or is it a biography? Because we are not right now.
Well, are we?
Maybe.
A little piece of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts off sort of sad and dark. But okay, let's...
No. We have to go... That part isn't sad when we first met. Maybe it was sad for you and dark.
Oh, you're going way back.
Well, that's where we have to go.
Okay. So we met in 2013.
That's right. Yeah.
I had just finished doing my whole week at the March for Life in Ottawa.
Yep.
So it was exhausting. I was one of the main organizers of the March for Life, and I had a youth committee. We organized the candlelight vigil. We organized the agenda for the march. I emceed the march. Then we did the youth conference and the youth banquet. And yeah, it was a lot. And we did a workshop at the youth banquet. And
you did all the high schools beforehand.
And we did all the high schools beforehand. Yeah. So it's pretty exhausting. And I remember having a really good youth committee that year, and it went really well. And so then I think I went right from Ottawa to Manitoba because our mutual friend Heather,
yes,
I think connected us, and you sort of did you run?
No, no. Heather put this together.
Okay.
So you came in and you lost your luggage.
Yes.
And that was the first time I met you in person.
Yeah.
So when Alissa, before you came, because we know you were coming.
Yeah.
To come and speak in Brandon, I did a bunch of research on you.
Of course.
Yeah, and so I watched you on all those interviews with
Corin,
yeah, Michael Corin on Sun when he was on Sun, yeah. And so I got to kind of get an idea of like who this person is that's coming in, and then I was the one who was tasked to come and pick you up.
Right. So
then when we go there, we got tickets. It was a breakfast thing.
Yeah.
And they forgot your luggage.
Yeah.
So then you looked
homeless.
Yes. Not quite like this.
Yeah.
But it made sense, and like I think no one batted an eye at it.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny about that? I remember because Maria had picked me up, and we went to the place where I was speaking, and I was the keynote speaker, and she walked me to the front, the very front table where like all the important people were. Right. But there were some priests and some organizers or whatever, and I sat down, and they kind of just looked at me and kept talking because I was in a hoodie,
right?
And 1.5 sandals because my sandals broke.
How some things don't change.
And then they said, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm the keynote speaker. And they said, really? I'm like, yeah, that's me. But I explained what happened right when I got up there. So.
Yeah. No, so it was all good. Mm-hmm. And then so you did that in a breakfast event in Winnipeg because it was a breakfast event. And then you had to come to Brandon. So we had to drive you to Brandon. Mm-hmm. And you bitch and complained the whole time.
It was so cold.
Too hot, then too cold.
I slept in your vehicle, and I had a dream that I was on like in the Arctic,
right,
on an iceberg.
Right.
I still remember that dream.
That's how our friendship started. And then you spoke at the pub event.
Yes.
What's that called?
Theology on
Tap. Theology on Tap. Yeah. So you spoke at the Theology on Tap. You stayed for a couple of days, or like another day or whatever, because Heather was your friend. Yeah. And then we all met Alissa, and we all became friends, and then we kept in contact over the years, and you learned from me how much I really didn't like my job.
Yes.
In public practice.
Especially tax season.
Especially during tax season. Yep. Just so during tax season, at the beginning of tax season, I would be a 32 waist. And at the end of tax season, I'd be a 36 waist, which is insane.
Yeah.
4 inches in the waist. And it's not because like there is no drinking, there basically is no eating. It's just sitting there for hours and hours and hours, and you're just so lethargic. It's like 4 months long, right from after Christmas all the way to the end of April. So especially during tax season, which was when I met you, and then you guys were getting ready for the No to Trudeau tour, and you kept bugging me about
I'm like, look this over, tell us what you think about this strategy. You just rip it apart after like months of work. You'd be like, why are you doing this? Or why don't you do this? Or are you tracking this? And it would really piss me off. But
that's kind of when Jonathan Van Maren kind of got a first introduction to me. And if I recall, he was not a fan. Because everything you guys, and he's like, who's this random guy that you're getting basically to audit our entire, like, what does he know? What does he have to say? Which is a legitimate question. But well, actually, but before that, before you went on tour, you got me to do the defund
abortion.
Yeah,
we had defund abortion rallies all across the province all across the country. And Scott was in charge of the Winnipeg one, and he got some media coverage. And he got there were paid union workers who went to counter protest, and even some of them got pretty obnoxious and got right up to the mic. And it was really funny because they're trying to speak into the mic or they're trying to block you, and you're not reacting in any way other than you just went like
I just sorry, I want to get the mic.
But it's a funny clip. But you had no time of day for them, and they actually left. No. They left you alone because they were
pretty much after that. I don't think they were expecting that. So.
So you did a good job with that, and yours was the most kind of eventful because you had so many counter protesters with the unions.
Like we had a couple hundred people out because we were supposed to rely on CLC's list. So that's kind of shocking. They had a couple hundred out. And then they had several hundred more of the counter protesters.
Yeah.
So it was
but CLC didn't pay them to be there.
Not that we're aware of, yeah.
So then you organized the Defund Abortion rally, and then you helped with the No to Trudeau tour, which was right before the 20.
Yeah, I don't know about helped, but...
You gave advice. You were a consultant.
Yeah, I think I was part of one call.
So not 2019, 2015.
2015. Yeah.
And then you organized a stop in Brandon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The No to Trudeau tour.
Yeah, that's right.
It was well attended.
That one was well attended. Mm-hmm. It was probably more well attended than the one I did for Defund Abortion in Winnipeg. But we packed that room at the hotel. Mm-hmm. We probably had close to somewhere between 50 and 100 people, which was pretty good for Brandon at that time, and like organizing that quick. I think I was like the last person to tell you not to use your cue cards. I think after that stop, you stopped, if I recall.
Yeah. When we would do these presentations at the No to Trudeau tour, basically I would go on first, and I would be maybe 20 minutes for the first half, and then Jonathan would go on for the second half. And I would talk about politics and strategy that way, and he would talk about culture and changing people's opinions and that kind of thing. And I had been doing public speaking for, years prior, but I think I was sort of intimidated by Jonathan because he's a really good public speaker. And I was sort of intimidated by the whole thing. Like the No to Trudeau tour was getting a lot of traction, a lot of publicity. And I just kind of got inside my head a little bit. So I thought to myself, I can't do this without my cue cards. But I had never really used cue cards before, so it really messed me up to try and stay on the card. And
we were all very shocked. Yeah, because you had come to Manitoba 2 years before that, and it was a complete difference. It was like you had regressed.
Yeah, it was really bad. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know how to get over this, like change this. And his talk kind of came, or it had to do with my talk. So I couldn't change it and wing it. It had to do with those talking points. So I don't know, I kind of just got a little bit flustered. And then you guys forced me, well, Jonathan, and I think you also recommended it to not use the cue cards. And the minute I stopped doing that, it went amazing. Yeah. And I could remember my points, and it went really well. And ever since then, I've never even remotely used cue cards where I write out the sentences. Of course you write out the points that you want to talk about or whatever, but that was a learning experience, and it went from negative to positive. But yeah, the first couple ones were rough for sure.
So it was during this time, and I think it was because you came in the spring of 2015 to Brandon.
Yeah.
So we had started talking about this beforehand, of me leaving I'll just say the firm. They're a good firm, and they were really good to me, and they're really good to a lot of my colleagues who are still there. MMP, that was the firm I worked at. And my dislike of public practice has nothing to do with MMP. In fact, I think I would have far disliked public practice more if I had been at a different firm.
Yeah.
You were even at a couple of the parties when you came.
Yeah, they were great people.
Yeah. Especially when they drink.
Especially when tax season's over.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we had started talking, or you had started asking me what if I consider, once I got my letters, because I was scheduled to get my designation and be done in the summer of 2015, if I would leave public practice and then go work at Campaign Life Coalition. Because I think when you and Jonathan and whomever else were discussing, what does the No Trudeau tour going to look like? Kind of what is the goal? Kind of what would you want for the movement? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably when you started to ask questions about what can we be doing better as a movement?
Yeah.
Especially politically, right? And you were at the only organization at that time that did anything political, where you thought did stuff political. Do I have that right? Is that when the questions started to pop up?
For sure. I mean, because I had been there since 2010, so this had been 5 years.
And your family is connected to the organization.
Yeah. So my grandpa was one of the editors of Catholic Insight, which used to share an office with Campaign Life Coalition. I think my grandma had done some volunteering, and my family was associated there, all pretty pro-life, my aunts and uncles. And some of them were known in the office and stuff like that. And I think because I was my grandfather's granddaughter, that Jim Hughes, the president, hired me in the first place. So anyway, it had been 5 years. And at first, when I started working there, it was really great. I really felt like I was contributing to the cause. I was learning the ropes. I was getting media interviews. I started doing the internship, which was really awesome, and training.
You actually got me to come speak at the internship once.
Yeah. And I did high school presentations, and we did street activism and all this kind of stuff. But it was sort of like I was recruiting people to do activism and stuff and strategies that had already been done lots of times before. And when I started to sort of think of what Campaign Life Coalition's role was in the movement, it did coin itself as the political arm of the pro-life movement. So then I was thinking, well, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing isn't inherently political.
Right.
So how can we change? Like, this is a huge behemoth of a task to kind of change anything political or have any political wins, really, because it is a controversial topic and a lot of politicians are scared to talk about it. And that has to do with part with the pro-life movement and in part with the other side. But I realized that, we weren't doing as much political activism or strategies that we should have been doing because we were so focused on all these other things, like the March for Life, the Life Chain, the 40 Days for Life, all these other strategies.
Fruitcakes.
Fundraising and things like that. And so then I started to get, I think even before you came into the picture, I started to question a lot of things. So we would have regular staff meetings, and I started to ask, why are we doing this? What is the result politically of us doing this? What can we do politically for this by-election or for this? And kind of started to question a lot of things, which I think kind of sometimes got under people's skin.
Yep.
And sometimes it didn't. Like, there are some people there who wanted the same kind of effective activism as I did.
Still are.
Yeah. So anyway, the point being is that my next strategy then was, after questioning things, to try and bring people into the organization, because it had been around for a long time. It has a lot of donors. It has a lot of supporters. People did look to their voter guides on how to vote and things like that. So I thought to myself, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just start bringing in people who could kind of gear it and change it.
And that's the right approach. I still think that's the right approach to go about it.
Yeah. And so, if I had interns that were really politically minded, really enthusiastic, I would ask, I would try and get them hired. Or if I came across people in my travels like yourself who I thought would really be a good fit, then I would try to recruit them. But it's not easy to recruit somebody to leave their job. It probably pays 3 times as much, especially if they're in another province, to come work for the pro-life movement. It takes a special sort of person. And so you are that special person, Scott. We started talking, and it did work well for us because it coincided with you hating your job. So I really took advantage of that.
You did know I had another job offer, right?
Yes. And I wasn't sure if you were going to say yes or not, but before we get to that, we'll take a quick break.
Nature communicates with us in a universal language. The sunrise starts a new day. The sunset marks our accomplishments.
The most beautiful communication is where the speaker and the listener match perfectly and understand the same message.
Your future audience is waiting to hear from you. What message do you need to share?
At LaRosse Media, we fashion beautiful communications through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Create your own most beautiful message. Visit larosmedia.com and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada, from coast to coast to coast.
And we're back. So, Scott, did you say yes? Did you say yes to the dress?
There was no dress.
The pro-life dress?
There was no dress. No, which job are you talking about? Are you talking about the one in New York that I applied for, or the one that was offered to me?
Well, just that I was recruiting you, and then you got another job offer. So then what happened?
Yeah, so the one that it just happened to pop up on LinkedIn. I was headhunted a little bit for it. And for people who don't know or haven't listened to the podcast all the way through, which is totally fine, thank you, Mom, for doing so. She was listening to it the other day when I was at home trying to catch up. So I love golf. I love to golf. I always have. Like, it's in grade 8, we had to do a project where you have to make a magazine for English class about like whatever topic, and I made a golf one, and it was pretty great. The content, the magazine looked like shit, but the content was great. Anyway, so just west of Brandon,
it's like the opposite of Playboy.
Yeah, in every way.
You weren't looking at it for the pictures.
Every way, yeah, no. There's some nice pictures in there, but not Playboy-esque. Okay. So just west of Brandon, like maybe 20 minutes from my parents' place, there's a really nice golf course. And it wasn't like a finalized job offer, but they basically said, like, if you apply for this, like, you will probably get it. Mm-hmm. And it was what's known as a controller. So basically you're the head accountant for this golf course. I think it started around 100 or 120 a year, which is significantly more than what I make, and definitely more than what I made at CLC. Yeah. And it was easy because I would basically they said like probably like besides month end and year end, you would come in, maybe work 6-hour days, and in the summer, if you come in at 6 a.m, like you're done at noon, you golf for free, like every single day.
So your dream job.
Basically my dream job. Yeah, I'm the accountant of a golf course. Yeah. Like it doesn't get any more dreamy than that. Yeah.
It's true. And I thought, for sure you were going to take that or maybe take something else. Maybe that was in the movement, but not necessarily like right in Toronto. You hated Ontario, let alone Toronto.
Yeah. Didn't mind visiting it, but the idea of living there was,
But we did a lot of negotiations. I went back to Jim and then went to you and you guys and connected you guys and they offered you a job. And so you came and I think it was September, right?
Yeah, September 15th was my first day on the job. Yeah. So I left home with all my possessions in my vehicle, which was very easy to put them in because I have none.
Yeah.
And moved halfway across the country to downtown Toronto. Yeah. So I started off, I went down to Minnesota to see a friend, to Chicago to spend time with Kantians down there. Went to go see my friend Andrew, who at the time was doing a semester in Ohio. Then came backtrack a little bit up to actually stay at your parents' place in Sarnia, and then finally went to Toronto, where producer Dave, who was my former roommate, he came down and met me on the street and picked me up like a homeless scared person, and I remember coming in thinking like, oh, I have to stop for a Krispy Kreme donut because there are no other Krispy Kremes in Canada at the time. I remember being very disappointed and thinking, this is not starting off well.
And you lived on the 8th floor of this apartment building, and I lived on the 9th floor.
That's right. Of course, you're one above me.
You lived directly below me. Like if I stomped my feet, you would hear it. Actually, one time I watered my plant, and
it was like the very first week. I was like, what the hell is happening?
And it leaked into your apartment.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were
my apartment's crying.
I think something's leaking. I'm like, oh, that's my plant. Yeah. Okay, so getting into the nitty gritties. Yeah. So then
it was the middle of the election campaign.
So what about September? Yeah. Was it
2015?
Oh.
Yeah, because Harper called it for August. And then I came in right in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Because voting day was in October.
Yeah. So then that was a huge pivotal moment for us because we had done the No to Trudeau tour. You had come to work at CLC. And then in the 2015 election, we went from having 80 pro-life MPs to 40.
Yes.
So after that election, we lost half of our pro-life MPs and some by less than 100 votes. Yeah. And we also we weren't sure if Trudeau, it wasn't going to be like a landslide Trudeau win. But, it's obviously very disappointing because Trudeau is such a hardcore pro-abortion leader and had said no pro-life candidates can run. And it was just very clear cut in this election where pro-lifers stood. So it was really sad for us. And that really kind of kickstarted us into not just questioning and recruiting, but kind of being more aggressive in, okay, this can never happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. And what was even more sad than that was just seeing what what everyone was putting, and I don't mean to get into a bunch of CLC bashing, and we won't spend a ton of time on this because we do know people there, and their hearts are in the right place. But just having your heart in the right place doesn't get the job done. And we are talking about 300 lives every day that end in abortion in this country. So it was really, really eye-opening right off the bat. And I knew what I was getting myself into. I mean, you had briefed me a lot. I had spoken with some of the people there. I didn't particularly get along. Personally, it was fine, but I didn't particularly get along in terms of strategy and tactics as well with the person that they put me under, my manager. And I everything that he had proposed in terms of implementation and things of this nature, I thought was completely and utterly wrong. And that's why we only had 80 pro-life MPs in the House of Commons, in a house that had 308 at the time, total members of parliament. So things like, I think Brad Trost called to say like, hey, like things are not, because this was in September. So this is after I came. Things were changing because it was a very long campaign. It was almost an ADD campaign. And he had called saying like, I need volunteers. I need people to go out and knock on doors, which is the most basic and most important thing you can do in an election campaign. And I remember an e-blast had been sent out or whatever to the CLC supporters in Saskatoon, because Brad's riding at the time was mostly in Saskatoon. And I think it was Zero had replied to volunteer and do some door knocking. And you had spent probably 3 days, maybe something like that. You called through all 1,200 people that you had phone numbers for in the list. By the way, you had to go to the secretary to ask for a list, and they had their own like special database that was custom made that would take like 5 hours to produce a very simple list that Nation Builder would do in like 2 seconds. And you called through the entire list, and not one and you found so many people that were deceased or elderly, or they give money to the pro-life movement being CLC, so they expect someone else to do this. And it was just really eye-opening to me when you came into my office, because were our offices beside each other? Sort of, like down the hall, but on the same side. So when you came into my office at the end of the day, also like everyone left by 3:30 because they had to commute back. We live downtown, so like I kind of get that. We live downtown, so we would be like there 2-minute walk from the office. So there were some nights during the election campaign in 2015 that we'd be at CLC's offices till probably midnight or past, and then I would take the laptop home and work even more. And then we lived, you were in the apartment above me, so oftentimes we would get together anyway and keep working. But I remember when you told me that, I was like, how are people who are getting emails and physical newsletters from a political pro-life organization don't know that it's kind of expected that pro-lifers will go and knock on doors? Like, to me, that was like, holy crap, we're way further behind in Canada than we ought to be, and that we definitely need to be. So
I think another issue too was that CLC is involved in so many other issues besides abortion.
Okay, yeah, I know where you're going with this.
So, like, they, about the, gay marriage issue, they asked candidates where they stood on that formerly. Like, even things like IVF and things like that. And then sex
climate
ed.
Change.
Sex ed. Even just recently, they were about COVID, which, I mean, is fine, but I mean, it's not necessarily like a pro-life issue. And I had lots of people in my life in the pro-life movement who got vaccinated and things like that, and were fine with the restrictions. And some people who would like rather die than get vaccinated or wear a mask or anything. So it was drastically different in the pro-life movement. And then also the more issues that you kind of engage in, and specifically with your list, the more people you're going to ostracize to a certain extent. So
there's finite resources too, right? It's one of those, the old adage definitely applies to that situation, where it's the man who does everything is the man that does nothing.
So we for us, we don't need our candidates to be perfect. We just need them to vote pro-life. We need to be basically like against killing people.
That
is like
that's
fundamental
a good base to start with. Like, if we can
no old people, no sick people, no babies. Just don't kill people. It's just a basic standard rule of thumb. So
that's just one example of many other things, right? And it wasn't like their end goal was wrong. It wasn't that their hearts were in the wrong place or anything like that. It all had to do with strategy and tactics.
And the one thing I will say, and I know I've written about this in my blog, is that when I would question things and when I would ask to do things differently, sometimes it was met with open arms, and sometimes Jim would just say, go for it. That's why we did the No to Trudeau campaign. Like, go.
And good on him for that, right?
And then sometimes I would get a lot of pushback, and someone besides Jim, a different person that was sort of higher up in the organization, told me on a conference call with all the leaders and former MPs, some former MPs were on there. She said, Alissa, you're never going to accomplish anything. You're never going to change anything in your lifetime. The best way to approach this is to do what you've always done and let God take care of the rest. And I just couldn't do that because, of course, if I'm a Catholic, so I do obviously believe in the providence of God, but I know that I have to do everything in my power as strategically as possible to help facilitate that. I can't just sit back and do things the same way over and over and over
God
again.
provides us resources. He provides us potential strategies, potential tactics. You have to utilize the providence that he provides in order to try to get, assuming that, we're in line with his will to get what he wants to accomplish. I remember when you told me that.
That was basically, for me, that was when I realized I can no longer work here because...
So you had that realization before I did. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah.
Because you were like, hey, we need to leave. And I was like, well, no, because in my mind, I was thinking there are good people here. We can bring on even better people. They have a plethora of resources and experiences. Not all bad, right? They run the March for Life.
Yeah.
And when you were on it, you legitimately actually had 25,000 people on Parliament Hill. So I was thinking, why not reform from within?
Yeah.
Which, of course, is a very Catholic approach to it. And you want unity, and you don't want splintering, and you want to bring people together. You want to campaign. It's about life issues, and you want to build a broad winning coalition. That organization literally did none of the things that their name suggested, unfortunately. And what made me really realize it is my immediate manager and I had a very different approach on something very, very simple, which was sending an e-blast out for fundraising. And I suggested some tweaks. And I don't remember what the tweaks are, but I would follow different blogs and studies about, okay, how do you get increased email open rates and click-through rates and fundraising and things of this nature? And how do we incorporate that into a fundraising e-blast? So things came a little bit to an head. So I said, okay, why don't we just test this, right? Because that's something I really believe in, especially as a chartered professional accountant, is you test it, to audit it, to get the results and go with what works.
Yeah.
And so we took the same list from Ontario. We split it 2 ways equally amongst people who had given in the past. So it's not, regionally one way or the other. It was a very, very even list. We were satisfied, okay, this is list A, list B. My e-blast went out, and I think it raised $1,000 within 24 hours. His e-blast went out same time, and it raised just under 100. And they still decided that they were going to use his template for e-blast. And I was thinking, why? Is it pride? Is it laziness? I don't understand. And then so I kind of lost it with his immediate manager, I guess, supervisor. And I basically said to him, okay, you have to choose between me or this guy, because this is just not going to work. These are 2 completely different strategies, 2 completely different tactics, and they can't be housed within the same organization. And they brought me in a couple days later to say, hey, thanks for coming in to work in CLC. We'd like to keep you, but we're extending your probation by another 90 days. And that's when I went to your office and I said to you, either when I go home for Christmas, we go and start our own organization and come back and work on that, or if we're going to you still want to stay at CLC, I'm not coming home after Christmas.
So that was basically when we decided we're going to leave. So we decided to leave, and that was just in the new year, just shortly after the new year. And when we first left, we didn't we didn't really have much. We didn't have really...
So we had $0.
We had $0.
2 names in the database, yours and mine.
Yeah. We had no website. I don't even know if I didn't even have a laptop. I think my parents, because I had the company laptop, so my parents had to send me money just for a laptop to get going. Yeah, and no income. So we got like a page, like just one page on a website.
What was it called? Rockstar or something. Yeah.
And people could just go and just add their names to it if they were interested to see what we were going to be up to. I wrote a blog that kind of got a lot of traction explaining why
it was eviscerating. But honest and fair.
Yeah. And so people did know why we left, and we were starting something new, and they were just sort of waiting for what that was. And so we were going at it really hard for about a month and a half. And then, so this was like end of January. We went hard February, and then
we went up to Ottawa. We were already on the road. We were meeting with MPs. Yep. They were super jacked. To learn that we were starting something new that wasn't, as they put it, crazy, like reasonable, because we were not we are not an all or nothing organization. What I mean by that,
incremental legislation.
like the most pro-life or piece of legislation that we can get to reduce the rate of abortion and assisted suicide. That's the one that we will encourage members of parliament and senators to vote for.
Exactly.
Even if it's not exactly what we want.
Yeah. So everything was going really well. We were working really hard. And then in March, the next month, my dad passed away really suddenly. So he passed away of a brain aneurysm. It was Good Friday of 2016. And everything kind of sort of halted at that point. Like,
big time.
I remember sitting in the hospital room floor with my mom. It was just the two of us. And the only thing that I could think of, or even other than my siblings who already knew, was to message Scott, who was in Chicago. And I think all I emailed you was...
No, it was an email. The first email was, my dad's going to the hospital. It doesn't look good. And then the second email, maybe an hour and a half later, was that he had passed away.
Yeah, and I think it just said, my dad died. And like, that was it. No really more of an explanation. So anyway, you had come back, I think, early from Chicago.
Left right away. I left the next day.
To come to Sarnia, and you stayed with my family for a little bit. But we didn't know what was going to happen with this organization, and I needed to stay home with my family. I thought that was the best place for me.
Alissa 9, right?
Yep.
And your little sister.
She was 5.
5 at the time.
So I just thought I needed to stay with my mom. Like, my mom needed like emotional support, and we just needed to kind of band together as a family. So
I helped you move down there.
Yeah. And
I helped you move your stupid treadmill twice.
No, it's an elliptical. But I remember about, honestly, like a week or two after the funeral, or maybe after he died, I was supposed to go speak in Windsor. Do you remember this?
Yep.
I was supposed to go speak at a sort of a little conference in Windsor, and I was very emotionally fragile, but you and I went anyway. And I did speak for a little bit, but you spoke for most of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still look at those pictures and can't believe that I did that, because I was just...
It was like 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks after your dad died. Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, you don't have to come." But honestly, having a little bit of a distraction and a little bit of a trip helped. But you really didn't put any pressure on me, and I didn't work with we went from like working crazy hours all day, every day to get this thing going, to me kind of not participating and very much, and you sort of doing it by yourself for a little while.
Yeah, you know what? But we already had stuff we already had some irons in the fire, so to speak, right? Like, we had already contracted the company to build our website, or at least like get that process started. And there were some MPs that helped make that connection there. Mm-hmm. You know, we were kind of building up our social media back when we can actually use social media. Mm-hmm. There were still people to meet, like in Queen's Park and like in other provinces. So, like, we things were already kind of going that I could work on, right? Like, so that the foundation had been set, and I could kind of pick up the ball and take it. I was single at the time, mm-hmm. Not married. So there was a lot of opportunity to do that. But yeah, like, part of me thought, until probably about the end of that summer, was this can go one of two ways. And like, either you want to talk about providence, well, it could be providential. Like, maybe we weren't supposed to do this. Mm-hmm. by the flip side, like maybe we are, and this is like a great test. And one of the things that you did when we got the first $10,000, was that before or after?
That was after.
That was after your dad died.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a very generous family member of Alissa's, whose late husband, your uncle by marriage, also died of a brain aneurysm, like almost exactly 4 years earlier. And we did a fundraising pitch.
She gave us our startup money.
She gave us our startup money because we needed the money for the website. Because once we were talking to the company about what we wanted for the website, that's when we got the cost. And so now we knew how much we needed to ask for that. And like I remember putting it together, working really, really hard on that fundraising pitch, the business plan. Right. We still had to finish that. And we went there, and I thought we killed that presentation. Like, I was kind of hoping, like, wow, sure, there's like 50 people in this room.
Yeah.
I don't think, obviously, like, your aunt wrote that check.
It's also very nerve-wracking because people might think that if you're asking your family for money or for startup money, it might be easy and you're just like, hey, but it's actually way worse than asking a stranger, and also doing a pitch to something that has no proof of concept really is difficult. But luckily I have family who are so dedicated to the cause, especially this family. And it was just, it was a yes right away. And if without it, I don't think we would have been able to remotely be as successful.
Yeah, there was like a couple others I think we had in mind for it, like in the area, but that was huge, right? So then we could keep going, and I think that startup money and the fact that we were building a website kind of formalized or solidified things a little bit after the death of your father. So that summer is a little gray to me. Well, you worked a lot on the website, right? Alissa hates working with web developers because they never get exactly what she wants. And I told her multiple times, like, you basically literally have to make it on whatever program and then send it to them, and they'll actually
and it worked well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So
we got our website up, and then we had no money. So for about a year and a half, or maybe a year, we basically brought in a tiny bit of money, and we basically each took $1,000 a month, and that paid for rent and cans of beans or whatever food we could afford. And that was basically it.
I from the end of January 2016 until it was almost two full years, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't pay. So I'll just throw the number out there. Our first salary that we paid each other for working like 60 to 80 hour weeks was $40,000 a year. And we didn't start making that until January of 2018.
Okay. So for 2 years.
For 2 years, it was just $1,000 a month. We get that for everything, car payments, gas, all of it, because we were also reimbursing the expenses that we were incurring on behalf of RightNow. Yeah. So I remember for those first 2 years, I think I went into $20,000 in credit card debt because somehow we had to pay for the food and the gas and all that stuff.
Even living really frugally.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't pay down that credit card debt until 2020. Like it took a really long time to do it. But happy to do it. And I totally would have done it again. Yeah. My parents offered a little bit of help, and maybe it's pride or whatever. I kind of want to see this through. Also, I kind of thought like, and then they did give help from here and there, right? Like, sometimes my mom would just like send me a check for like a couple $100s because she just felt so bad. But we needed to see, well, at least for me as a CPA, like I needed to see if this would be sustainable in and of itself without help from parents, because parents can't help you,
of course,
when you're in our 30s, and they can't help people that we hire. So it has to be self-sustaining. And one of the ways to make it that way is going and asking people for money. Yeah.
So in this 2 years, though, I will say so we started in 2016. We didn't do our fundraising tour until 2018, but within
2017.
In 2017,
because it was after the leadership race and after
the very first so we had already been very successful in two separate ways, which I think put us on the map.
Yeah,
and people thought we were way bigger because of those two successes.
I think they still do.
So the first one we worked on was the Sam Osterhoff nomination, which we were very very much a part of, like one of the main people to a certain extent, other than his hardcore family and some supporters. And then the second one was the Andrew Scheer leadership race.
Yeah.
And he won by a ever so slight margin, probably because of the pro-life movement, more or less.
Not probably, like absolutely because.
And it was the first time we had released a leadership website, which gave a suggested ballot. It explained everything.
Did Campaign Life Coalition do recommendations for leadership?
Not that I was aware of, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that I had ever remembered, but I don't know how many leadership races I was there for, to be honest.
Probably
because it was Harper forever.
Just the one in Ontario, the 2015 one before we started.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember they had to recommend because it really just came down to Patrick
Brown. Yeah, exactly. So no, I don't quite recall. They certainly didn't release a suggested ranked ballot. Maybe they said,
still
these
don't
two
really
candidates or something. Yeah,
which was a huge difference between because there were 13, 14 candidates running that leadership race.
Yeah.
Some very pro-abortion, some very pro-life, but there was a lot of in between, and there are gradations.
Yeah, so it wasn't just enough to say, just vote for Pierre and Brad Trost. We said no.
Pierre Lemieux, by the way.
Yeah, Pierre Lemieux. Vote for those two at the top, but then rank your ballot all the way through, because there is a difference between getting a Kevin O'Leary as a leader and getting an Andrew Scheer or
Maxime Bernier. Even there was a difference between him and Kevin. Yeah.
So because we did this and we did it a different way, and we interviewed all the candidates, and 11 of them out of the 13 or whatever responded, and people could read through that. We did all the voting records. We did and then we also ranked them on winnability too, just so people could see how many Facebook likes they had, how many Twitter followers, what their influence was, all that kind of stuff. Were they members of cabinet? So and it was very easy to kind of go through, and that leadership website put us on the map.
Do you remember working on it for 2 straight days?
We did 2 all-nighters.
Yeah, and in our apartment, so my buddy Andrew and I, we lived together, and Alissa was up in Ottawa because we did a Facebook Live to launch it.
At the Manning Networking Conference.
Back when you could actually use Facebook Lives to get followers.
Yeah.
And it was during Lent, so we're eating tuna out of a can, and I think we in total between those 2 days slept
maybe an hour a night, I think.
Yeah.
Just to
working on the floor, literally working on the floor. Because I couldn't afford any furniture.
And I didn't know how to do it too. I was still kind of figuring out what looked good, how to do this practically, how to work on the website, and we did it all without any outside help. It was just the 2 of us. So anyway, but I think it really made a difference. It was worth it because people printed out our ranked ballot. They printed out everything. They sent it around. So huge. Many people came into our database. We got the respect of a lot of MPs and politicians because they thought it was really effective and strategic. So even before we did the fundraising tour, we did those 2 things, those 2 campaigns, and those were, one of our most successful ones.
Our database went, I think, from something like 2,000 or 3,000 when we had launched it. So we spent a year building that, and then it went close to 10,000, for the rest of the leadership race.
So then we had to go to we couldn't live like this anymore. We had to do our fundraising tour. So we basically said to ourselves, we have to raise this much or we can't really go on. We have to, instead of getting, $250 or $300 a month, we have to bring in at least $1,000 a month or something like that.
10.
It was 10,000.
It was the goal was to raise $10,000 in monthly income for the organization, so that we could afford our salaries and then travel costs and software and all that type of stuff. And this doesn't include, by the way, we don't have an office physically.
Yeah.
This is it.
Just work from home.
Yeah.
So so some of our most hardcore supporters organized little kitchen parties. They did little presentations in their living rooms, and we just went all across the country wherever people would have us.
Got in the Rogue.
Got in Scott's car, has seen a lot of the country, and so we went from making $300 a month to I think close to 10,000. It was like 9,000 or something.
It was close enough. Yeah, it was just under.
And so we thought, okay, people are buying what we're selling.
Close the gap tour. That's what it was. Tour.
Yeah. And so that was really encouraging, and so then we were able to actually get things going, and so then it was this was in 2017. So then in 2018, we just started to build on that. Nominations. And that was really crazy because we were both in Ontario. So of course we're going to work on Ontario nominations. Patrick Brown was the leader. And like we talked about in the last or a couple podcasts, past ones, it was just disqualifications. There was just so much
there was no certainty.
Corruption. And there were stuffed ballot boxes, just so many crazy things that happened with the Ontario PC party when Patrick Brown was leader, that we sort of thought, this we can't be as active and as effective as we wanted to be with this guy in power because he's just so corrupt. And so we decided that then I would move to Alberta right before the election here and get involved in the nominations here. Scott would stay in Ontario and we would focus federally and in other provinces. But then on the way to Alberta, as I was driving to Alberta, shit went down with Patrick Brown. He got removed as leader. And there was a new leadership race in Ontario with between Doug Ford and Christine Elliott, among others. And then I was involved here in Alberta. So in the last provincial election, we helped close to 56 candidates here in the province, pro-life ones. The majority got elected. They started a pro-life caucus of sorts within the party. There was even a conscience rights bill that was put forward by Dan Williams, a hardcore MLA here, and a hardcore conservative, social conservative MLA here in Alberta. The NDP tried to put forward a motion 506 to expand abortion access. There was a really great MLA in Medicine Hat, Michaela Glasgow, who stood up and just tore the ledge apart against.
I love that video. I love Michaela. I really love that video.
It's pretty inspiring. It was one of the best speeches I've ever seen in any legislature. So I went to Alberta and we had a lot of success. They got a majority here and it was really great and it really well worth it. And I love the province and I'm excited to work on, more nominations and elections. This upcoming election, despite the fact that there is a leadership race, which I'm not super thrilled about, but we can get into that some other time. But that takes us to, I guess, right before 2019. And so there's still at least...
there's still another hour to talk about, minimum. Yeah. So time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. Our producer just said hey, you guys are pretty close to an hour. So that basically brings us to some of 2018. There was more stuff that happened in 2018, but maybe we should save that for... Yeah, we don't like to go over an hour. Yeah.
It gets a little much for the listeners.
I'm hungry.
Let's have sushi.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we definitely will do a part 2 on this for sure. Maybe even when we're still together.
Sure.
And we'll release that in the next couple of weeks. But we'll keep you guys on a cliffhanger. I think that's a good idea. What do you think?
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to us this week. Thanks for coming on this journey. This memory. What is it called? When
can you remember what?
Can you remember the memory?
Yeah.
This journey of the past. The past.
Walking down memory lane.
Thank you.
Okay. We are gonna get destroyed at whatever trivia night we're supposed to go to tonight.
Thank you for walking down memory lane with us. And we'll be thinking about you as we eat our sushi. So make sure you subscribe to us anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble. Make sure that you check us out on our website, thestinkingalbatross.ca. You can also check out our Right Now website, itstartsrightnow.ca. You can follow us on Twitter at RightNowHQ, same with Instagram with the same handle, and on Facebook, RightNowHQ as well. Both of us have our own individual Twitter handles. Scott is at Scott M. Hayward and I'm at Alissa Globe. So we'd love to connect with you, hear from you, see what you think, and follow you and you follow us. And we can work together on different issues facing our culture today.
Or you can just send messages and scream at us of anything you hate. Or questions.
We like hate mail. It's always a good time.
We get a lot of it.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Nature communicates with us in a universal language. The sunrise starts a new day. The sunset marks our accomplishments.
The most beautiful communication is where the speaker and the listener match perfectly and understand the same message.
Your future audience is waiting to hear from you. What message do you need to share?
At LaRosse Media, we fashion beautiful communications through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Create your own most beautiful message. Visit larosmedia.com and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada from coast to coast to coast.